Section 1, 12 Years in the Shadows. Hey friends, tonight we step into one of the most quiet, most tender stories in the life of Jesus. You won't hear thunder or see fire falling from the sky. There's no storm to still, no towering miracle witnessed by thousands. Just one woman, one moment, one touch. If you thought miracles were always loud and dramatic, think again. Because tonight we follow a woman who had every reason to hide, and yet she dared to reach. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment to tell me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you feel is the stillness, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that stretches across days, like a fog that never lifts. You walk beside her now, a woman draped in simple robes, her face mostly covered, not for fashion, not for modesty, but because invisibility is safer than shame. She walks with care, not because she's fragile, but because every step reminds her of what has not healed. Every motion is a memory of the pain, of the doctors, of the years that gave no answers. 12 years. You pause with her at the edge of the street the way she always does, out of sight, out of reach. People pass. No one greets her. Some glance, then glance away. She's learned how to fade, to exist just enough not to be noticed, to carry her bleeding silently, to mask her suffering behind neutral gestures and small, invisible movements. But it wasn't always this way. Once she had a place at the table. Once she was welcome at festivals, embraced at weddings, laughed with neighbors by the well. Then one day, it started. A drop, a cramp, a concern. Then it didn't stop. The physicians called it many things and offered her many potions, but none of them worked. Some only made her worse, and with every visit, every failed treatment, her coins disappeared. Her friends, too. Even the women who once prayed with her grew distant. You see, her condition wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, cultural. She was considered unclean, unworthy to touch, unwelcome in sacred spaces. And so the years folded in on her, one after another. She learned how to gather water in the quietest hours, how to leave coins for bread without looking the vendor in the eye, how to mourn the life she once knew without ever hosting a funeral for it. What would you have done if your pain became your name? If no one spoke to you without flinching? If 12 years of silence became the only voice you knew? Some nights she lies awake, her hands on her stomach. The ache, more than physical. It's the ache of being forgotten. The ache of wondering if even God has turned his face. But still, she wakes each day. She brushes her hair. She sweeps her doorstep. She breathes. Because even when hope feels too fragile to carry, she refuses to let go of the thread. And tonight, she will hear a name whispered in the market. A name that stirs something long asleep inside her. But that is for later. For now, you rest with her in the shadows. Not because that's where she belongs, but because that's where her story begins. And the story that begins in shadow is about to move toward light. Awaiting continues Section 2. Section 2. Avoided, unnamed, unclean. The morning light spills in soft over rooftops, but she doesn't go out to meet it. Not yet. Not like others do. She waits, like always, until the streets grow quiet, until the children have rushed off, until the neighbors have disappeared into doorways. Only then does she step outside. And even then, her footsteps are careful, measured not just by distance but by dignity, because the world has already measured her and found her lacking. You walk a few paces behind her, not to spy, but to feel what she must feel, each time she bends her head to avoid the judgment in someone else's eyes. There was a time when people said her name. Now they just say her. Or worse, that woman. The one who shouldn't be at the well. The one whose presence defiles the path. The one who makes others step aside. You see it happen as she approaches the market stalls. The subtle shuffle, the slight pullback of a hand. The pretending not to see that speaks louder than words. She's not dangerous, but to them, she's a risk. Not because of what she's done, but because of what lingers inside her. 12 years of slow exile, not behind walls, but behind looks, behind rules, behind silence. And still, she needs to live. She waits near a basket of figs, watching the vendor from a distance, waiting for the others to finish their choosing. When the last one leaves, she steps forward, places a small coin down and takes 2 figs in her hand, never meeting the man's eyes. This is how it's done, everything wrapped in distance, everything softened with silence. Because unclean doesn't just mean sick, it means unworthy, unseen, uninvited. And the deeper tragedy? After a while, she begins to believe it. You feel it in the way she moves, shoulders slightly rounded, steps lighter than necessary, as if trying not to take up space, as if apologizing for existing. And yet, beneath all that careful quiet, there is something burning, not loud, not demanding, but alive. A flicker, a question that won't fully die. What if this isn't forever? What if I'm not meant to stay hidden? Because the body can only bear pain for so long. But the soul was made for light, and something in her soul is beginning to stir. She returns to her home and places the figs on her table. She eats slowly, not from scarcity, but from gratitude. Because each bite reminds her she is still here, still breathing, still able to taste, to hold, to wonder, and sometimes that's enough to open a window inside the soul. She lies down again, her back to the wall, facing the door, and that's where she hears it. Not clearly, not directly, but just enough. 2 women passing outside her home, talking low, the way people do when something has them stirred. He healed a man's hand right there in front of everyone. They say he touched a leper, didn't even flinch. She doesn't move, but her breath catches in her throat. Who? Who are they talking about? She strains to hear more, but the voices fade, the footsteps retreat, and she's left there still, with her heart suddenly louder than her surroundings. A name, that's what she needs. A name to match the miracle. Because something in her knows, deep down, that if the stories are true, maybe, just maybe, they were meant for her too. You sit with her in that silence, that sacred pause, where curiosity becomes a question, and a question becomes prayer. Not the formal kind, but the aching kind. The kind that sounds like, "Please, Lord, let it be real." Awaiting continues Section 3. Section 3. The weight of days without hope. You rise with her the next morning before the sun fully breaks the horizon. There is no rooster crowing, no bustling of family in the next room, no one to greet her, no one to notice if she stays in bed or if she never rises again. But she does, she always does. Because even when hope has vanished from the world outside, some quiet instinct still calls her to meet the day. You walk with her inside her home. It is simple. Stone floor, a small table, a jug of water, folded cloths. Nothing extravagant, but nothing out of place either. Everything in her world has become deliberate, tidy, manageable. It's what happens when your outer life shrinks. You learn to tend carefully to what's left. She dips her hands in a bowl of cool water and wipes her face. She ties back her hair. And you feel how each action is heavier than it should be. Not because her body is weak, but because her soul carries the weight of 12 years of absence. 12 years without touch, without temple, without laughter rising easily from her chest. 12 years where the world kept turning, but she remained on pause. She steps to the doorway again, gazes at the sky, soft grey-pink now, the light stretching gently across stone and soil. And she wonders, would they notice if I left? Would they care if I disappeared? Not in a dramatic way, just a real one. Because when days blur together and when names vanish from people's lips, you begin to wonder if you've become less than real. But even that thought fades because the duties of the morning don't wait for her grief. There is water to fetch, there is bread to prepare, there is always another day to endure. And endure she does. You walk with her to the well. She waits as always, not in line but behind a stone outcropping nearby. She listens for voices to fade. She lets the other women draw their water first. She does not interrupt, she does not speak. When it is quiet, she approaches. She lowers the rope, the jar descending into coolness. She pulls it up with practiced arms, and then she walks back, avoiding every eye, even the ones that no longer bother to look her way. Because being forgotten can become its own kind of shelter. Painful, but predictable. She reaches home, pours the water into her clay vessel, and sits, just for a moment. Her hands tremble slightly, not from the illness, from the remembering. You see it on her face. She remembers what joy once felt like. She remembers being a child, running barefoot on the hillside. She remembers songs. She remembers voices calling her by name. And now, silence. Silence is her companion. Silence is her mirror. Silence is the thing that fills her room, even when she cannot. And yet, even now, even in the slow ache of repetition, even when she dares not speak it aloud, there is a new silence growing alongside the old one, a waiting silence, a listening silence. You notice it too. It's in the way her shoulders straighten slightly when she hears footsteps in the distance, in the way her fingers pause over the bread dough as if hoping to hear more, in the way her heart listens now for that name, the one the women whispered, the one she didn't quite catch. Could it be? Could it really be? She doesn't know what he looks like. She doesn't know where he walks or where he stays. She doesn't even know his name. But something has shifted inside her. She's no longer asking if healing is possible. She's beginning to wonder if healing is near. And that is no small thing. For someone who has been called unclean, to even consider that holiness might come close, that is a kind of defiance. That is a kind of hope. So as she kneads the dough and tends her little fire, you see something rare behind her eyes. Not a smile. Not quite. But something that wants to be one. You sit with her as the day passes, as the sun arcs slowly, as the shadows move along her wall. Nothing miraculous happens yet, but maybe the miracle is this: she's still watching, still waiting, still refusing to disappear, because somewhere deep in her spirit a voice is rising, gentle but certain. You are not forgotten. Not by him. Awaiting, continue Section 4.
Section 4. Whispers of a Healer in Galilee. The wind shifts just slightly this afternoon, not enough to shake trees or stir curtains, but enough to carry voices. You sit beside her again, near her open window. The day is ordinary. And yet, not quite, because sometimes hope doesn't announce itself with trumpets. Sometimes it arrives inside a passing word. A whisper not even meant for you, but one you were meant to hear. It begins with two men speaking in hushed tones just beyond the courtyard wall. Their sandals scuff stone, their robes brush against thorny shrubs. She doesn't mean to eavesdrop, but the name they say stops her. Jesus. The syllables feel foreign and familiar at the same time, like hearing the first notes of a long-lost melody. She holds her breath. The men speak of Galilee, of a man walking from village to village, teaching, healing, touching those no one else would. He laid his hands on the blind man, and the man saw. He didn't recoil from the leper. Even children run to him. She leans closer, the tips of her fingers curling into the folds of her robe. This is more than rumor. This is testimony. The kind of story people only tell when their own eyes have seen it. And something within her breaks open, a crack in the dry soil of her heart. Not pain this time, but possibility. What if this Jesus could do what no one else has done? What if he's not afraid of the likes of her? She backs away from the window, mind reeling. She whispers the name now to herself, as if afraid it will vanish if she doesn't hold on to it. Jesus. And again, softer this time. She doesn't know where he is now, or if he'll ever pass through her village. But the seed has been planted, and seeds, when watered by hope, are stubborn things. You move with her into the quiet part of the afternoon. She cannot concentrate. She doesn't finish preparing the lentils. She burns the bread slightly, because something new is moving in her now, a question she hasn't allowed herself to carry in years. What if I tried just once more? But the thought is dangerous. It means opening herself to disappointment, to rejection. She's been told so many times, this is just how things are. Some people are meant to carry suffering. You must have done something to deserve this. But none of that feels true when she hears his name. Because stories like the ones those men told, they don't match the God she thought had forgotten her. They speak of mercy, of nearness, of a healing that's not bought or bargained for, but given freely to those who dare to reach. She doesn't sleep that night, not because of pain, but because of wonder. She lies on her mat and stares at the beams of her ceiling. She turns over one single impossible question. If Jesus ever came here, would I have the courage to go to him? The question doesn't go away. It lingers through the next day and the one after. She begins asking others, softly, with care not to raise suspicion. Have you heard of a man named Jesus? Have you seen him? Is he near? Most only shrug, but a few nod. They've heard too, and he's not far. Not anymore. By the third day, she hears what she was waiting for. from a traveling woman, arms full of spices. He's coming through the village. Today. That word, today, lands like a bell ringing inside her chest. You feel the silence that follows. That trembling kind of silence when a soul stands at the edge of decision. Because this might be her only chance. And she knows what it could cost her. If she's seen in the crowd, she could be mocked, pushed away, shamed. But what if she's not? What if she touches him? Even just his robe? Is that allowed? Is that faith? Is that enough? The sun has not yet risen high. The crowd has not yet gathered, but her heartbeat already echoes louder than footsteps on the road. She folds her hands together, closes her eyes, whispers his name once more. Jesus. And then she stands. For the first time in years, she does not step to the side. She steps forward, not quickly, not confidently, but she moves because something has awakened in her that even fear cannot silence. And you walk beside her now into a day unlike any other. Awaiting continue Section 5. Section 5. What if he could see her? The road is already warm beneath her feet by the time she reaches the edge of the village. The air carries the scent of olive trees and the subtle stirrings of dust beneath sandals. But she barely notices, because her heart beats louder than the world around her. Not from fear, though fear is there, but from the ache of longing pressing against her ribs. She walks slowly, wrapped in her shawl, eyes lowered, not from shame, but from focus. She knows what she's come to do. She just doesn't know how yet. You walk beside her again, feeling her pulse in every step, her breath shallower than usual, as if her body is trying to keep up with her hope. A few others pass by, moving toward the same center road. They speak quietly, with excitement in their tones. He'll be at Jairus' house, they say. Pass through the olive grove just after sunrise. I heard he healed the centurion's servant just with a word. The crowd is beginning to grow. She edges closer, and then she sees them, a swelling river of people flowing along the path ahead, all heading in one direction, drawn to one presence. Jesus. He's in the center, barely visible through the weave of bodies, just a glimpse of his robe, a flash of his hair. The peace around him, so palpable it ripples through the air. She stops walking, just for a moment. Because now that she's this close, she realizes something she hadn't dared to consider. What if he looks at her? What if he turns? What if their eyes meet? What would he see? 12 years of affliction, 12 years of isolation, 12 years of being told she is dirty, less than, rejected by heaven itself. Could she bear it? To be seen by a holy man? Would he recoil? Would he step back like the rest? Or could it be different? She grips the edge of her shawl tighter. She has no right to speak to him. She wouldn't dare cry out like the others. She wouldn't dare interrupt. But maybe, just maybe, she doesn't need him to see her face. Maybe she only needs to get close enough to touch what touches him. Just a thread. Just the hem. Could that be enough? You pause beside her as she leans against a stone wall, catching her breath. She closes her eyes, remembers the sound of those two men speaking by her courtyard, remembers the name they said, the stories they told. She pictures the man who walks among the people, not with pride, but with gentleness. The one who doesn't turn away from the broken. The one who welcomes the outcast. The one who hears cries no one else listens for. And she dares to believe, if anyone could understand her silence, it would be him. What would you have done, standing there with the pain of years behind you and hope just steps away? Would you press forward, or would you shrink back? She presses, not recklessly, not with boldness, but with sacred desperation. Every inch forward is a battle, not just with the crowd, but with the voice inside her that still doubts she belongs. She squeezes between two women, head down, barely brushing their shoulders. She avoids their eyes. A man steps in front of her, pausing to listen. She waits, then steps around him. Her fingers twitch slightly. She's close now, close enough to feel the hum of the crowd around him. Close enough to sense that something is different in this space, as if the world is leaning inward. She stretches her hand beneath her robe. One more step, just one more. You feel her prayer before she says it, a quiet echo not with words, but with every fiber of her being. If I can just touch him, I will be healed. That's it. No bargains, no speeches, no demands, just a touch and trust. She breathes once, inhales the dusty air, exhales her fear. Then she reaches, not for his face, not for his hand, but for the hem, the very edge of his garment, brushing just above the ground. And her fingers find it, only for a heartbeat. But in that heartbeat, everything changes. Awaiting continues Section 6. Section 6. Crowds form, roads fill. The moment her fingertips brush the hem of his robe, time slows. Not in the dramatic way the world imagines, but in that deep, soul-stilling way where silence becomes holy. You feel it too, like the hush before a soft rain, like the quiet in a room when a newborn breathes for the first time. She doesn't cry out. She doesn't fall to her knees. There is no flash of light, no thunder, just stillness. And then, the pain is gone. Gone. The ache that pulsed beneath her ribs for over a decade, the heaviness she carried through each dawn and dusk, vanishes like morning mist in the warmth of sunlight. She knows it before her mind can make sense of it. Her body knows, her spirit knows, and she freezes. Because this healing, this holy reversal, it's not imagined. It's not symbolic. It's real. You look at her and she is no longer bowed. Her posture eases, her jaw unclenches, her breath, deep, free, fills her lungs without effort, as though she's taken her first true breath in years. But her joy is fragile, sheltered under the fear of being seen. She wants to melt back into the crowd, disappear with her miracle tucked silently in her heart. And yet, that's not what happens. Because just a few steps ahead, Jesus stops, mid-stride, mid-conversation. The crowd presses forward, but he halts. He turns slowly, and the people hush. You hear him ask the question, simple and calm, "Who touched me?" It's not an accusation, not a rebuke, it's an invitation. The disciples glance at one another, puzzled. One of them chuckles nervously and says, "Master, the crowds surround you. Everyone's touching you." But Jesus doesn't move. His eyes scan the crowd with gentle purpose. And she knows. She knows he knows. Not just that someone touched him, but that she did. She tries to shrink into the folds of the crowd, but something within her, stronger now, clearer, won't let her run. He felt power go out from him, he said, and she felt it enter her. Two currents meeting at the edge of a garment, two realities intersecting in one holy touch. You watch her tremble, not from pain, but from awe, and from the deep fear that maybe she's overstepped. Maybe she's taken something she didn't deserve. Maybe he'll undo what's just been given. Still, he waits. He doesn't look impatient or confused or upset. He looks expectant, as if he's waiting not just to know who touched him, but to see her, to draw her out from hiding. You feel her step forward before she even moves. Her body stills, her fingers loosen, and then she takes one step, then another, until she stands just within his gaze. The crowd watches. No one speaks. She bows low, knees pressing into the dust, head bent. And in a voice that barely breaks above a whisper, she tells him everything. Not just that she touched him, but why. What she believed, what she carried, what she'd lost, what she feared, and what happened the moment she reached for him. Her words fall like petals into the silence, each one sacred, each one honest. You stand beside her, you hear your own heartbeat, and then he speaks. Only a few words, but they gather her like arms around the soul. "Daughter, your faith has made you well." Daughter, not stranger, not woman, not unclean. Daughter, you see it wash over her like rain after drought. The kind of name that restores more than health, the kind that speaks to belonging, to identity, to love. He doesn't ask her to explain her past. He doesn't question her worth. He simply calls her healed. And his. He adds one final word, "Go in peace." And somehow she knows how. She knows how to walk now, not as the broken one, but as the beloved. The crowd parts, not from fear or dismissal, but as witnesses. Witnesses to a quiet miracle that unfolded not with shouts, but with a whisper and a touch. You follow her as she steps away, a little straighter now, a little steadier. And though the road is full of people, she feels for the first time in years that she belongs among them. She doesn't need to touch him again, because something in her has already changed, forever. Awaiting continues Section 7. Section 7, called Daughter at Last. The word echoes long after the crowd moves on. Daughter. She turns the word over in her mind again and again as she walks, not away in retreat, but onward in release. You walk with her down the path, past olive trees whispering in the afternoon breeze, past villagers who no longer seem threatening, past the dust her own healed feet stir gently into the air. Daughter. No one had called her that in years. She was that woman, the sick one, the unclean. But now, she was known, named, claimed. Daughter. Not a title she asked for, not a label handed down by others. It was his word, spoken once but reverberating through every hidden place in her heart. You glance at her and see how the curve of her shoulders has shifted, how she stands taller, how her face seems more open to the light. Something deeper than healing has occurred. This was not just a body mended. This was a soul restored. She moves slowly, as if savoring each step, like someone tasting freedom for the first time. You both pass a garden, small, tidy rows of herbs and wildflowers. She pauses, crouches, runs her fingers lightly across the lavender. She smiles. Not because she's forcing herself to feel happy, but because joy has returned to her like a long-lost friend. Not sudden and loud, but soft, like the morning sun breaking through a window. And now, for the first time in 12 years, she doesn't think about how to stay hidden. She doesn't scan for exits. She doesn't pull her shawl tighter around her face. She breathes deeply, letting the air move through her without pain, without fear. And you realize this is what it means to be truly seen. To be called not by your sickness, but by your place in someone's heart. Daughter. That one word spoke what years of suffering tried to silence. You belong. You are part of something again. You are family, loved, whole. She walks through the village and people look, but now she meets their eyes. She isn't trying to prove anything. There's no announcement, no performance. But her presence speaks volumes, and some who knew her, who'd averted their eyes for years, now turn toward her, blinking in quiet awe. She passes two women at a well. One gasps, whispering her name. The other stares, her jaw half lowered. They remember, they see, they wonder. But she just nods gently and keeps walking. Because the healing wasn't just physical. And the miracle wasn't just the ending of pain. It was the breaking of the silence, the reclaiming of her name, the arrival of peace where shame once ruled. You walk with her as the sun dips lower. Children chase one another through narrow lanes. Goats bleat. Evening lamps begin to glow behind curtained doors. And the woman, no longer unnamed, no longer hidden, finds herself drawn toward a quiet grove. She sits beneath an olive tree, knees drawn up, arms around them, face turned skyward. You sit nearby, both of you wrapped in golden dusk. And now, with no one to press through, no crowd to part, no robe to reach for, she whispers his name again, not as plea, not as wish, but as thanksgiving. You wonder, how many others did he call daughter? How many hidden lives did he restore with a single word? And you remember, he didn't just stop for her. He turned for her. He spoke to her. He saw her, and he called her his. Peace isn't always found in still waters or quiet hills. Sometimes it finds you in the center of a crowd, when a heart that never stopped hoping finally dares to reach. And what a reach it was. She touched the edge of his robe and found herself fully known. Awaiting continue section 8. Section 8, the silence after healing. The next morning, the world seems unchanged, and yet to her, everything feels reborn. Birdsong still rises over the rooftops, vendors still call out prices, children still chase one another through sunlit alleys. But within her, a stillness has taken root. Not emptiness, but peace. You walk with her again as she steps outside. There is no hiding now, no slow wait behind corners, no calculated glances to avoid the judgment of others. She walks into the morning like someone arriving home. It's almost strange how ordinary the day appears. No one heralds her miracle. No temple bells ring in celebration. The sky doesn't break into song. And yet, isn't this the greater wonder? That healing can be so quiet, so personal, that only your own soul hears the celebration? She runs her fingers along the wall near her gate, a wall she once leaned against while gasping through pain. Today, she touches it simply to feel the stone beneath her palm, to remind herself she's still here, still whole, still free. She goes to the well at mid-morning, not early, not hiding. When the other women are there, she joins the line. No one speaks at first. They glance her way, some cautious, others curious. And then one woman steps forward, hands her the jar she was holding. A simple gesture, no words, but you feel it, acceptance, slow, tentative reconciliation. She takes the jar, fills it, smiles. And for the first time in what feels like forever, she stays a while. She listens to their stories, shares small laughter, mentions a recipe for lentils that her grandmother once taught her. No one asks what happened that day, not directly, but one woman leans in, softly, almost reverently. Was it true? Was it really? Him? The woman nods and places her hand gently over her chest. That's all she says. That's all she needs to say. You sense it then. A sacred kind of silence shared among those who believe. The kind of silence that holds awe. She returns home differently. She doesn't rush, doesn't retreat. The wind brushes lightly across her skin, and she allows herself a small, full smile. Inside, she sits by the window, not curled inward, not hidden in shadow. She opens the shutters wide and breathes. This quiet day after the miracle is its own kind of grace, because healing doesn't always lead to a parade. Sometimes it leads to a cup of water sipped slowly, to bread kneaded with patient hands, to walking through familiar paths without pain. She picks herbs from her garden, ties them into small bundles, hums softly as she works. The song is one she hasn't sung in years. You don't recognize the words, maybe no one does anymore, but it rises from her like spring water returning to the surface. You sit with her as dusk approaches. A neighbor knocks softly on the door, an older woman needing help lifting a water jug. She answers, smiles, follows. No hesitation, no self-protection, just presence. As you walk back, the air carries the first scent of olive smoke and stew. Evening settles like a cloak over the rooftops, and you realize something profound. The miracle did not only happen when her bleeding stopped, it happened in every moment since, in each breath she took without fear, in each step she made without shame. Peace was not just granted, it was chosen, again and again. And maybe that's what healing really looks like. Not always loud, not always witnessed, but true, quiet, holy, enduring. She lights her lamp as the stars begin to blink awake, one small flame against the darkness. But isn't that always how it begins? Awaiting, continue Section 9. Section 9. The edge of the crowd was enough. You sit beside her in the fading light, her lamp casting a warm circle on the clay floor. She's not speaking, but her silence is different now. It's not the kind that once wrapped her in sorrow. It's a silence full of reflection, soft like the hush of evening after a long-awaited rain. She holds a piece of fabric in her lap, simple, frayed at the edges, a shawl she once used to hide her face from the world. Now, she folds it gently, presses it to her heart, and sets it aside. You wonder what she's thinking, but somehow, you already know. She's remembering that moment, not the moment of healing alone, but the choice before it, the trembling risk of stepping into the crowd, because that was where the miracle began, not in the touch itself, but in the decision to try, to hope, to move. She didn't demand his attention. She didn't cry out, didn't ask for permission. She reached, quietly, humbly, from the edge. And that was enough. You let the stillness of the room hold space for that truth, that sometimes you don't need to stand at the center, you don't need to shout the loudest, you just need to believe that even from the margins, God sees you. She never expected to be noticed. She just wanted to brush the fringe of something holy, and still, he turned. Still, he knew. Still, he called her daughter. You glance at her now, how her fingers rest calmly in her lap, how her breathing flows in gentle rhythm with the flickering light. And you ask yourself, what have I hesitated to reach for? What healing have I feared to seek, simply because I thought I didn't belong at the center? She didn't wait to be invited. She didn't wait to be worthy. She moved with a faith so quiet it almost went unnoticed. Almost. But heaven noticed. Jesus noticed. And in turning toward her, he turned toward all of us who have ever felt unseen, unworthy, too broken to step forward. You feel that invitation linger in the air even now, to come as you are, to reach, not with perfection, but with faith, even if all you can manage is the edge of his robe. She stands again, walks to the threshold of her home. The moon is full above the rooftops, and the village rests in calm and sleep. She doesn't step out this time. She simply watches, content, grounded. There is no urgency now, no ache to chase or silence to battle. There is only presence and gratitude. You listen to her heart speak through the quiet. He saw me, he heard me, he healed me. And more than that, he loved me. The crowd moved on. The road is empty now, but she remains, whole, seen, free. And you remain with her in the stillness that holds more weight than the crowd ever did. At the edge of the moment, faith was enough. Awaiting, continue Section 10. Section 10, when hope walks beside you. The night deepens, but it does not feel heavy. You sit beside her in the quiet glow of the oil lamp, its flame dancing in the slow rhythm of her breathing. She doesn't speak, not out of hesitation, but because words are no longer necessary. Some truths settle best in silence. Hope, once distant and fragile, now walks beside her. Not as something she chases, but something that has chosen to stay. She stands slowly and moves through her small home, touching the corner of the table, adjusting a clay jar, folding a cloth with care. Ordinary acts. But tonight they are different, because she performs them not in weariness, but in restoration. Her limbs no longer tremble with pain. Her strength no longer leaks away like water through cracked stone. She is whole. And every act now, no matter how small, is a declaration of that truth. You follow her outside into the cool hush of midnight. The stars above shine clearer than you've ever seen. The village rests, wrapped in sleep. Even the animals have stilled. And beneath that vast sky, she does not feel small. She feels known. She remembers how far she's come. The years of hiding, of longing, of disappointment, wrapped in prayer. And she remembers the risk. Because faith is never easy. It often comes clothed in risk, in vulnerability, in steps that make no sense to those watching from the outside. But hope had whispered that day, and she had listened. You wonder, what if she hadn't? What if she had stayed home, afraid of being seen, afraid of being shamed one more time? Would she still be whole? Would she still be here, under these stars, feeling peace soak into her bones? She looks at her hands, those same hands that reached forward, trembling, toward the hem of his robe. They look the same, but they carry something new. Confidence, memory, blessing. She closes her eyes and stretches her arms slightly to the sides, not in surrender, but in welcome. To the breeze, to the night, to the new life unfolding before her. It would be tempting to think the story ends here, in the healing, in the quiet victory. But healing, real healing, always begins a new story, one that continues long after the miracle. One that asks, how will you live now, beloved one? Now that you are free? She turns back toward her home, and you walk beside her. There is no need to speak. The answer is already blooming in every step. She will live as one seen. She will live as one loved. She will live as one who once whispered his name in pain, and now sings it in peace. Inside, she sits again by the window. The moonlight slips through the open shutters, casting soft shadows across the walls. She doesn't pray aloud, but you know she is praying. A prayer of thanks. A prayer of wonder. A prayer for the ones still reaching, still waiting at the edges of their own hope. You look at her and see it clearly. She is no longer the sick one, no longer hidden, no longer forgotten. She is daughter. She is healed. She is whole. And hope, gentle, faithful hope, walks beside her still. Awaiting, continue section 11. Section 11, from waiting to walking. The morning returns, soft, golden, unhurried. Birdsong fills the air before the sun fully lifts. She stirs with the light, not from pain but from peace. You watch as she sits up slowly, stretching arms that no longer ache, feeling muscles respond with quiet strength rather than stiffness. This, too, is part of the miracle. Not just the moment of touch, but the slow unfolding of life afterward. The return of normal things, of mornings with no fear, of waking without sorrow waiting by the door. She walks barefoot across the floor, the cool clay grounding her. She prepares her morning with hands steady and sure, gathering water, preparing bread, sweeping dust from corners. Each movement, once laborious, is now filled with quiet dignity. And now, when she walks, she doesn't count steps in fear. She doesn't ration her strength. She walks like someone who belongs in her own story. You follow her into the sunlit lane. The village is already stirring. Neighbors nod as she passes, some cautiously, some with wonder, all remembering who she was and seeing who she is. There are no explanations given. She does not need to convince anyone. The wholeness in her stride speaks louder than words. One young girl glances at her shyly and asks, "Did he really touch you?" She smiles gently and shakes her head. "No, sweet one," she replies. "I touched him." And the girl's eyes widen, not in fear, but in sacred fascination. This story, the quiet, miraculous one, is beginning to ripple, not through noise or crowds, but through hearts that carry it forward, from voice to voice, from soul to soul. You realize now that this healing was never meant to remain hers alone. It was given in public, so it might comfort others in private. She moves past the well, where others draw water. Someone offers her the rope, expecting her to hesitate. But she doesn't. She lowers the bucket herself, pulls it up with practiced rhythm, and hands it over, steady and sure. The others watch, and though no one says it aloud, you feel what's rising in the air between them. Respect, wonder, reverence. Because when someone walks through pain for 12 long years and comes out radiant with peace, you can't help but pause. She doesn't demand attention. She just keeps walking, through markets, through fields, through memories now stripped of their sting. And everywhere she goes, she carries something unseen but deeply felt. Hope, not the vague kind, not the someday, maybe kind, but the kind that has known suffering and has survived. The kind that reaches in the dark, trusting that even the edge of grace is enough. You watch her pause beneath an olive tree and kneel to gather wild herbs. It's the same grove where she once sat in hiding. But now there is no hiding here. Only light, only presence. Only a woman who walks freely in the very places that once held her pain. And as the breeze stirs the branches, you hear her hum again, the melody she carried from childhood now rising like new breath. She was the woman who bled. Now she is the woman who lives. And every step forward is a step away from shame, a step deeper into peace. Awaiting. Continue Section 12. Section 12. The road behind, the path ahead. As the day unfolds, warm and open, she finds herself drawn to the edge of the village, the place where that crowd first gathered, where the dust stirred with anticipation, and where her story turned quietly toward the divine. You walk with her there, retracing the steps. The road is quiet now. No press of bodies, no murmur of voices, just wind whispering through tall grasses and the occasional rustle of birds in the trees. She stops where it all began, that place in the crowd where she slipped in like a shadow, afraid to be seen, but desperate to be healed. She kneels gently, pressing her palm to the earth. It feels like returning to a sacred altar, not made of stone or incense, but of dust and hope. She doesn't cry. She doesn't speak. She just rests there, letting memory and gratitude intertwine. You sit beside her in the silence, and it becomes clear this isn't just where her body was healed. It's where her courage began. Because it took more than belief to reach for his robe. It took defiance, a defiance against shame, against the rules that said she didn't belong, against the years that whispered she was forgotten. She wasn't healed because she was brave. She was brave because she believed healing might still be possible, even for her, especially for her. Now, as the breeze lifts strands of her hair, she gathers a small stone from the ground. She turns it in her hands, then places it gently on the earth where she knelt, not as a shrine, but as a marker, a quiet testimony. He met me here. You imagine how many others will pass this spot, never knowing what happened here, never seeing the sacredness pressed into this soil. But she will know, and you will remember. She rises and begins walking again, this time not toward home, but beyond. The road stretches out like ribbon under the sun, leading toward neighboring hills, toward new places, toward unfamiliar names and faces. You sense it in her steps, the call to share, not to preach, not to argue, but to live the truth she now carries. To be a quiet witness, a walking story of restoration. You pass shepherds guiding their flocks, children gathering wild figs, elders resting beneath fig trees with slow-moving shadows. She smiles at each, offering greetings. Not grand gestures, just warmth. That's all it takes sometimes, to be the person who smiles, who pauses, who listens. And though they may not know her story, they feel something in her presence. A lightness, a peace. And isn't that what a miracle truly becomes once the moment has passed? Not a spectacle, but a presence. Not a shout, but a steady glow. As she climbs a small hill, the wind lifting the edge of her robe, she stops once more and looks back. The village rests behind her, bathed in soft light. It holds her past, her sorrow, her waiting, her ache, but it also holds her beginning. And the road ahead? It holds what her healing was always meant to unlock, the rest of her life. You stand beside her, looking forward into the quiet stretch of path before you, and you realize the miracle didn't just give her back her health, it gave her back her future. Awaiting continues Section 13. Section 13, a future made of light. You walk with her as the path widens, curving gently through low hills where olive trees stand like quiet witnesses. The air is filled with the hum of bees, the warmth of the afternoon sun resting softly on your shoulders. She doesn't speak much now, not because she has nothing to say, but because peace doesn't always speak in words. You sense it in her, that her healing has become a rhythm, woven into the simple things she now chooses to do. She pauses often, not out of fatigue anymore, but out of wonder, to notice the color of the wildflowers, to watch a hawk glide overhead in a perfect circle, to place her hand on the bark of a weathered tree and feel its age. Each pause is a prayer without words. You come upon a small house just beyond a rise, a modest home with a worn gate and a courtyard of cracked stones. A woman stands at the entrance, frowning gently over a pot she's tending. The woman you walk with steps forward, offering her help before anything is asked. The homeowner hesitates, then nods. And as they speak, you see how easily she slips into kindness. No effort, no performance. She is simply present. And it becomes clear, this is how she chooses to carry her healing. Not with fanfare, not with boasting, but with quiet acts of service woven into ordinary life. They work together through the afternoon, kneading dough, grinding spices, watering the garden with buckets passed from hand to hand. Children appear at the edge of the courtyard, curious, barefoot, wide-eyed. She smiles at them and waves them closer. And before long, there is laughter. Not loud, but honest, the kind that rises like birds startled into flight. You sit beside her in the shade as the sun begins to dip. She's tired now, but in a good way. The kind of tired that follows a day well spent. The kind of tired you earn. The other woman places food before her, fresh bread, herbs, a small bowl of lentils. And for a while, they simply eat together. No questions about the past, no probing into pain, just shared silence, shared peace. And you realize this is how her miracle keeps moving. Through each meal shared, each story exchanged, each act of presence that leaves a gentle imprint. She doesn't need to carry scrolls or speak in parables. She is the parable now. Her life, a story of reaching, of faith, of healing, ripples outward in quiet waves. After the meal, she walks to the edge of the nearby field, golden in the early evening light. The wind stirs through the tall grass. She closes her eyes and lifts her face to the sky, and the expression there is one you'll never forget. Peace, gratitude, freedom. 12 years of pain did not define her. 12 years of waiting did not diminish her. And one moment, one gentle, trembling touch did not just change her condition. It changed her identity. She no longer carries the name the world once gave her. She is not the bleeding woman. She is not the unclean one. She is not even just the healed. She is beloved. She is whole. And now, she is a woman with a future made of light. Awaiting continue section 14. Section 14, the story she now tells. As the stars begin to scatter across the evening sky, you find yourself seated beside her once again, this time near the edge of a small gathering. There are maybe 7 or 8 people, sitting on low stones and baskets, their faces glowing in the firelight. Children lie half asleep in their parents' laps. A woman braids her daughter's hair. Someone hums a tune, slow and ancient. And then, softly, someone asks her, "What happened that day? With him?" She doesn't answer right away, not because she's reluctant, but because she's searching for the right way to hold such a sacred memory. You watch as she looks into the fire. The flames flicker gently, like they're listening too. Then she speaks, not like a teacher, not like a prophet, but like someone remembering love. "I was tired," she begins quietly. 12 years tired. No one interrupts. Even the night seems to hush. "I had spent all I had, chasing answers, trying to be fixed, trying to be worthy of being among people again." You feel her words settle over the group like a warm shawl, but no one could help. And eventually, people stopped trying. I became the one they pitied or avoided. She pauses, and you see it. How gently she's holding her past, not hiding it, not shrinking from it, just placing it where others might understand. And then she continues, "One day, I heard he was coming, and something rose in me. Not desperation, I had already lived with that." Her voice softens further. It was something quieter, hope, the kind that makes your hands tremble. A child sits up slightly, eyes wide. "I didn't want to stop him. I didn't want to be seen. I just thought if I could touch even the edge of his robe." Her eyes glisten in the firelight, but there are no tears of sorrow, only wonder. "And I did, just a brush of my fingers across the fabric." She opens her hand slightly, as if reliving the moment, and something in me shifted. She touches her heart gently. I knew it before he turned around, before he asked who touched him, before he called me daughter. The word lingers. The listeners lean in closer. And he didn't shame me. He didn't rebuke me. He gave me something no one had given me in years. Her gaze lifts from the fire. A name, a place, a peace. The circle stays silent, wrapped in reverence. And then the woman beside her places her hand over hers. Not as an answer, not as a question, just as connection. Because now they've heard it. Not just the miracle, but the heart behind it. You watch as others begin to speak. Not loud, not formal, just fragments. My brother, he hasn't walked in years. My husband is growing more bitter. I don't know how to reach him. My child stopped speaking after his father died. And to each one, she doesn't offer advice. She doesn't promise results. She simply listens and says softly, he sees you too. Not maybe. Not if you believe hard enough. Just truth, offered gently, like cool water on a warm night. She doesn't carry the authority of priests or scholars. But her presence holds something they all trust. She has touched him. And she remembers what it was like to feel forgotten. That makes her story sacred. And now, it is no longer just hers. It has become something others carry too. A story passed not through books, but through hearts, through firelight, through shared silence, through the quiet courage to say, I understand. She looks at you as the stars deepen, and you understand. Miracles don't always end at the touch. Sometimes they begin there. Awaiting continue, section 15.
Certainly. Here's a fully reimagined section 15 of your sleep story script. Section 15, the name no one can take. The evening settles gently across the land, spilling golden light over rooftops and across the open road. She stands at the edge of her home, looking out, not behind her, but ahead. You're with her, quietly present as the hush of twilight smooths the edges of the day. Her shawl brushes her shoulders, but she doesn't wrap it around herself to hide anymore. It rests there like a memory, no longer a shield, just fabric. The shadows stretch long and soft, and she walks. There's no destination pressing her forward, just the simple desire to move through the world as she is now, whole, open, free. You walk beside her as she greets a neighbor, pauses to pat a donkey's head, smiles at a child waving from a doorway. Every step she takes is different now. Not because the path has changed, but because she has. Once she walked this very road with her head down, avoiding eyes, counting cracks in the dirt instead of clouds in the sky. Now she lifts her gaze freely. She walks like someone who knows who she is. Someone who knows she is loved. You follow her through the outskirts of the village, to a well she once feared to approach during the busy hours. It was easier to come at dusk, when no one would be there. When her presence wouldn't make others uncomfortable. But this time, people are there, drawing water, chatting, laughing, and she doesn't wait for them to leave. She steps forward, steady, gracious, unashamed. A young woman notices her and offers her the rope and bucket. Their hands brush as they exchange it, and something quiet passes between them. Not explanation, not question, just shared strength. You watch her draw the water, pour some into a cup, drink slowly. She wipes her mouth with the back of her hand and exhales. The kind of exhale that only comes after years of holding your breath. Someone nearby whispers her name, her real name, not the name her condition gave her, not the one the townspeople used in caution and pity. Her name. You see her pause, and then she smiles, not just with her lips but with her whole face, like the sun catching the surface of water. That name, the one called in kindness, finds its way deep into her again. The name that was once buried under shame, under loneliness, under years of being labeled by her affliction. But no longer. She's not a miracle story to gawk at. She is a person. She is a daughter. She is known by name. And what Jesus gave her that day, with that look, that word, that healing, no one can ever take away. Not age, not time, not memory, not doubt. You follow her back toward home as dusk deepens, the first star blinking quietly above. She lights her lamp as she always does. But now, its glow feels different, not just light for the room, but a symbol of something burning within her. Hope, peace, identity reclaimed. She doesn't speak, but her stillness speaks volumes. You feel it in the air between you. This is no longer the woman who suffered. This is the woman who overcame. She reaches for the folded fabric she once used to hide, and now she presses it gently to her chest, not as a relic, but as a reminder of where she's been and who she has become. She places it back down with care, and then she looks at you, softly, fully. And in that look, you hear the quiet blessing of her life. You are not what hurt you. You are what healed you. You are what you chose to believe when it mattered most. And just like that, you know she will be remembered, not for 12 years of suffering, but for one moment of faith that changed everything. The name she carries now? It is Beloved. And no one, no voice, no history, no scar can take it from her again. Awaiting wind down, wind down. And now, dear one, the story rests, like a candle burned to its final flicker, not extinguished, but fulfilled. The woman who once walked in shadows now walks in light, and the robe she touched, it was not just fabric, it was mercy, woven in grace. Let your thoughts soften with her memory. 12 years of pain met one sacred moment of belief. And in that moment, everything shifted. She was no longer the sick one. She was no longer hidden, no longer waiting, no longer afraid. And neither are you. You are not your weariness. You are not your unanswered questions. You are not your delays or detours. You are held. You are seen. You are deeply, endlessly loved. Close your eyes now. Let the hush of the night become your peace. Let the quiet echo of her steps lead you gently home. Let her healing remind your own heart that restoration don't shout, it whispers. Even now, in this silence, and as your breath slows, as the weight of the day releases its hold, know this: there is nothing you have to prove, nothing you have to earn. Just rest. Rest in the same grace that met her on that dusty road. Rest in the love that never looked away. Rest in the truth that you too are known by name. End of script. Sweet dreams.